Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. In this episode, we're going to focus in on the brand new plugin from Waves, the CR8 sampler and the Cosmos sampler browser. Now, I have decided in my infinite wisdom that we should bring on somebody like Mr. Matt Lang. Matt Lang is a mixer, a remixer, a producer, a songwriter, actually a freaking awesome guitar player as well. But this is his world. And he lives in it very, very well. He's done a ton of huge mixes and remixes that those of you in the dance community will probably know very well. So Matt is going to take us through this plugin. I believe that the CR8 is only $9.99 and Cosmos is included with it. Cosmos is also a free standalone plugin, but I'll stop waffling. Let's check out the plugin with Mr. Matt Lang.
Hey folks, Matt Lang here, and I'm checking out the new CR8 sampler and Cosmos sample browser from Waves. The CR8 sampler is a pretty basic sampler, but its entire focus is really on creativity and being able to turn things into melodic content pretty easily. And meanwhile, the Cosmos sample browser, it claims to do a lot of very cool analysis to automatically tell you all the different like metadata of a sample, from your key to your BPM to even like the types of sounds they are, just via the analysis. So let's dive in and check it out and see how it works. So I'm inside Pro Tools here, and I've just loaded up a few instrument tracks just with the CR8 sampler. I have 4 of them. As you can see here, right now it just says drop a sample, and we could actually drop a sample from, say, Finder or an audio browser or something like that. But instead, if we click this is going to bring up Cosmos, and Cosmos is really quite interesting. I'm not a big sample browser guy in general, and Cosmos might have shifted me on that because it's really, really helpful, and it's really nice to be able to see everything and search for things in a very just elegant way. I loaded all of my individual, not all, but quite a few libraries in here, but let's just hide all that because it's a bit much. If we just look at the Waves audio factor, the actual, this Cosmos itself comes with, I think, 2.5 gigabytes of sample content from Waves, and it's free. So it's a lot, but as you can see, it just says, there's the titles, and it says underneath it, you get the characteristics. So it's like full kit, drum kit, breakbeat, acoustic, dry for this WA breakbeat 128, and we can preview it. And it's a breakbeat. So let's search for something. Let's just say strings. We can type that in, and now it brings me all these different string samples, and as you can see, it also, like everything else, has the beats per minute, has the key, and any other characteristics. So let's see what this WHLO high G minor 120 BPM thing sounds like. So if I double click that, that drops it right into Cosmos, and now I can play it. And the other thing to note is there are multiple different kinds of modes as far as what kind of sampling you can do, and it automatically put it into harmonic, which is a time stretching algorithm, as opposed to classic, where this is more traditional sampling. And let's also move the start point up here. Now if we play it an octave up, it'll play twice as fast. Or an octave down will be half speed. So that works like anything else. What I find more interesting is the actual melodic modes. So for instance, as you can see, they're tailored towards different kinds of sounds. So beats is going to be more based on slicing, and harmonic, melodic, and voice are all different algorithms to basically manipulate tonal sounds. We'll take harmonic for now, why not? And the nice thing is you can really slow things down. This is where it gets interesting for me. Like now we're getting kind of sound designy, and that's exciting to me. So that's something you can do really quickly. So that's something I really like about CR8. And I typically, I love samplers in general, and I tend to use samplers that are much more feature equipped than this. And there's something about the simplicity of it that makes it very immediate, and I'm having fun with it. So the other thing I like about this too is you can freeze sounds, and it's just, you take this little, stop sign, and now We're frozen. And you can scan through the waveform. The other thing that I found really helpful is, so where it says root, it automatically sets the root to be C3 in this case, but if you hit the little treble clef, then it's going to actually change the root key to be what the key of the actual sample is. So that makes this really helpful when you're, for instance, trying to put this in, basically any other track where everything else is always going to be like, samples. They're all kind of like different keys. This is an easy way for all of it to actually really just fit together into the same key really easily. So that's a cool trick. So that being said, maybe let's just try to put something in. Let's turn this into a pad or something like that. So since we have this violin, let's adjust the basic envelope. And maybe let's actually scroll a little bit further. Let's find a better starting point. All right, that works for me. Why don't we duplicate this channel? And this is something that's really easy to do. So you just take this little tab here, because you can have up to 8 layers. And if you grab it across, it's going to duplicate it. So now we have 2, and they're exactly the same. But on the second one, let's just tune it up just a little bit. Let's say 10 cents or something like that. And that's going to give us more of like a chorusy unison kind of thing. But as opposed to using the unison feature, which there is one, this gives us a little bit more control. So now we can go to the mixer tab right here, and we can pan both left and right. And now we have a nice big lush pad. So that's great. And let's go back here. Let's assign a filter. There is just a basic, you get a high pass, low pass, band pass, and then a peak, basically. So we're going to have to ultimately redo that. But let's add a second envelope. And this is your whole modulation section down here, and has basic stuff like you do LFOs and sequencers. And that's it. And we also have 4 individual envelopes. So let's use the second envelope. And you can just drag and drop the modulation, which is handy. Very much like X for Serum or something like that. So you can either use the knobs, or you can just drag the envelope manually yourself. I'm going to do both, because why not? And you can also change the curvature from linear to exponential, which is a nice thing. And now let's add that. We added it, so we can just try that up. I'm going to disable the other side for a second. So now this should do a nice little swell. Let's make it more. Okay, and let's just copy and paste that over to this guy again. And let's look at our mixer, and we'll make that here. So now we have our nice lush chord. Wait, little fine tuning. That's nice, that'll work. Also then, let's get a beat in here, just so we have something to kind of work with. So as opposed to using the sample, or the sampler version with the CR8, we also have a standalone version. And in here, I'm just gonna search for, let's say, breakbeat. And I'm gonna use a different sample, because in these samples, these are all samples of mine and none are breakbeats. So let's go back to the Waves audio factor, and I'm going to search for breakbeat. Let's take that one. And I'm just going to drag this directly into Pro Tools. What's this one? It's a little choppy, actually. Let's try this. Why not? We'll use that. So I can just drag it. And now we're in Pro Tools, just in the audio grid. And my session's at 96. This thing is at 90. So I'm just going to quickly fix that myself. And that is close enough. So all together, sounds like this. It's kind of a weird loop, so let's also edit that. Let's just put another snare there. And now we just have our basic loop to work over. So let's just say, let's play these chords just over that. I'm just going to make a little, this just for my sake of playing, just a little lead in. So let's just record a little pass. All right, and I will quantize that just because it's a pad and I don't care. And now let's add some bass to this. So let's go back into a CR8 and we're going to open up Cosmos. And I am just going to search for, let's only use, or, let's add some matte samples too. Why not? And I'm just going to search for 808. Lots of 808s. Those are snares. I want a nice big 808. Ooh, here we go. What is Distressor 808? Sounds nice and massive. So let's use that. So double click it, drops in, as you can see. This time it automatically put it in the melodic mode again. I don't want that. I want this to be straight classic sampling. So let's go into classic, and I'm going to change it to go to the root. So the root, it says, is a C sharp. So we'll find out if that actually was correct. It is. That's actually pretty amazing, shockingly. So that got it right. Let's bring down the volume a little bit, and I'm just going to plug in some bass. All right, let's fix that real quick. And let's just take a quick look at the MIDI to make sure nothing funky is going on, because that's a little weird. Get rid of that. And now we have some nice bass in there. And that was nice and easy, which was great. Let's make another kind of pad. Let's use more of like the modulation system in this one. So let's once again open up the CR8 and we'll hit the Cosmos button. And let's look for something else that we can, let's look up Rhodes. I don't want to use these because these are all big chords. Right. So let's do something that is, let's say, one note. And maybe that'll give us something simple. What is M Rhodes 1? That's still a chord. What is this? You know what? I know that's sourced from Rhodes, so let's use that because we're using this to really just make something weird anyway. So here we are, and we're back in the CR8. This time, let's use the melodic mode. And we'll move the start time over here. Let's hit the treble clef at the root just to put everything back into the same key. And that's cool. So now something that I find really cool is the flat button, which actually in the case of this doesn't matter because it's all the same note anyway, but the flat button, what it'll do, it'll literally flatten the pitch of all the different notes. You have multiple things in there. So actually, I'll show you that in a different example after that, but it's really creative. So anyway, now that we have this section here, let's freeze it. Or maybe let's just slow it down by, let's say, to 25%. So it's pretty slow, and we can play a little bit higher. That works. Let's try the unison. And what does that do? Nice and chorusy, and there's a width button here, or width knob, so we can make it mono. Or super blown out. Let's do super blown out because it's always fun. So that's going to be the basis, but now let's open up our modulation panel. Here is the LFO sequencer area, and I'm going to make a little sequencer. So I'm just going to do 8 steps. And I want the rate to be 16th notes. And I'm just going to draw something out. Okay. And I'm going to assign this to, let's do the frequency cutoff of the filter, but really it's going to act almost as an amplitude modulation, really, because it's basically a sine wave. So we just drag that over to cutoff, and let's bring the modulation all the way up. And that sounds great. So I'm just going to then copy my chords from below here. And let's also gate everything exactly on that last quarter note, just to make it all really tight. So now with the drums and the bass, so that's really quite cool, and it's easy. So now let's open up the sampler yet again and get weirder. So I'm going to open up Cosmos, and this is something that I find really cool. So for instance, let's take this guitar solo. I'm sure that has a lot of different notes in it. Sure does. Wah guitar solo, it is in G minor, 80 beats per minute, but I don't care. Let's go into melodic mode so we can flatten it. And now when I do that and also hit the treble clef at the root, that should make everything basically be the same note. So it works, and you can hear some weird artifacts in it, and to be honest, I think it's kind of cool because it's not trying to be perfect. You're doing this really to get weird. So fine by me. Let's go over here and let's slow it down, let's say by 25%. Let's even go slower. So that sounds pretty damn cool. So now I'm just going to use this as a bass. And let's all drop that. And we'll use the filter. And let's use a 24-pole filter as opposed to the 12, just to make it extra subby. There's a drive. And if we wanted to give it, say, a little bit of wobble or something like that, there's already a sine wave there. We could make our own LFO if we wanted to and get all weird. There's also just a preset list of LFO shapes. Let's go back to the sine wave. And why not we just do, let's do an eighth note, sure. And I'm just going to drag that to the cutoff. Sounds like this. So in context, and you hear as it gets towards the end of that long note, then you get that kind of weird artifact. That's really cool. And that's just easy to do, and it's creative, and that's what's actually pretty great about the CR8. Let's make one more of these things, and let's go to the browser again. And let's just look for a loop that in general has a lot of information in it. Let's look in here, one of mine. This is a metaphysical library I made, and it's like mostly dance music and stuff like that. So there should be interesting sonic choices in here at least. So like, what's this? Like plastic buckets. And then bucket pitched hits. And what's full tribal? I just want to find one that has kind of a little bit of everything. Actually, let's use this because that has some nice low end and some nice high end. So automatically it's going to put into beat mode. And it's playing it at our tempo of 96 beats per minute, as opposed to the normal tempo of, what was this, like 125? Or it says it right there. So let's do the root thing. And mainly that's just because of the kick drum. But now let's change the algorithm. Let's do voice. And voice is great on a vocal, but it also works pretty well in a different way like this. So we're going to flatten the pitch. And so now it sounds like this. So now it's almost starting to sound a little bit like a vocoder, which is pretty interesting. So let's slow the speed down. That's going to bring out the tone even more. Right? And maybe this actually works better here. So it almost is vocoding, which is quite fun. And we can also, of course, like we could freeze it and then, and you could, for instance, say, let's put another LFO on the offset and let's make the rate nice and slow. And that should do some pretty interesting sonic things if I actually enable it. So that's too much, so we have to do it a lot less. That needs to be way slower. It's a little weird, but it was worth trying. And let's remove the modulation. And you can just right-click also, and that'll give you all your modulators. You can assign them like this. You can remove them. I'm just removing them. I'm going to unfreeze it too. So now we have that. Let's just add a delay to it. Let's drag these chords in there again, but maybe, or actually let's take the ones that have the gated end note. Maybe I have to go up an octave. Let's see how it sounds. So yeah, it works pretty well. It's just a silly little idea, and the tempo's weird, and it's like, an okay breakbeat, but I didn't do any editing to it, really. I just wanted to see what I could quickly jam out. And in that sense, the CR8 is really successful in being able to give you very quick, or a path to get ideas out quickly, and definitely get some nice inspiration and what have you. And then the integration with Cosmos really is quite fantastic. I'm not going to lie, the fact that you can really just drag and drop anywhere. There we go. I can just drag in audio files and it'll go straight into Pro Tools, straight out of the plugin browser. That's very cool, very hip. And out of curiosity, I just want to see if, let's try a third party. Let's just open up an instance of Contact, because I want to see if this will work. Now that I'm in here, let's say I go back to, this is the regular Cosmos. I'm just going to grab any of these samples. It doesn't really matter. So, and there we go. Now I have that in. Perfect. So it integrates already with everything, which is really quite incredible. And so I personally will be using Cosmos a lot moving forward, because it's super handy and it's really great to have access to all of your sounds just like that. And CR8 is definitely a fun, it's an easy little sampler. It doesn't try to be anything else than what it is. And I think for the most part, considering how inexpensive it is, it's a great little tool. So my overall feeling about both these tools, CR8 and Cosmos, is they're pretty great. And Cosmos is free, which you really can't beat that. And especially because I live in Pro Tools, I don't really have like a sample browser that something like Ableton Live has, which is really great for Ableton. Now Cosmos actually gives me a way to have similar functionality, and I don't have to use Ableton. I can still do everything in Pro Tools. So that's really great, and it's fun stuff. So give it a look. Maybe you'll be inspired. See ya.